Welcome to the International Online Conference on Creating Stability Within Uncertainty. And today we have with us Professor Marianne van Woerkom from Tilburg University and Erasmus University in Rotterdam. Hello.
Hello.
So Marianne, would you be so kind as to tell us a little bit about COVID-19 in your country, and with a special focus about education institutions? What was going on?
What was going on was, of course, what was going on in a lot of countries, that in the beginning of the year, like end of February, we were having the first COVID infections, and especially in the south of the country, where also my Tilburg University is in the south of our country. So one of the first measures that were taken actually was to say, okay, people from the south should work at home. So I was one of the first people who would work from home. But then, a couple of weeks later, I wrote it down here, the 12th of March, everyone who possibly could, should work from home. And then 3 days later, the schools were shut down. At least, well, they continued online. They had, of course, to make the switch to online education, but for the rest they closed. I'm not sure, because there was some discussion whether primary schools should also close down, and perhaps they were a little bit later than the secondary schools, because of the information that we had, that young children were probably not so infectious as children a little bit older. So in the beginning, we have kind of a scientific committee that advises our government. In the beginning, this committee says, well, there is no need to close down the primary schools. But then there was a lot of protest from the primary schools, who were really worried also about their teachers, and who also felt a little bit, because one of the arguments that our government used to not close down the primary schools was that they said, yeah, but we need, of course, we need their parents. The parents of those children might work in healthcare or might work in all sorts of vital jobs. So therefore we cannot close down the primary schools. And then the primary schools objected, and they said, well, we don't like to be abused as a kind of babysitter. That's not what we're here for. And they kind of, based on their sentiments, the primary schools were closed down as well. And that situation lasted for about 2 months, because at May 11th, primary schools and daycare centers started to open again. And at first they opened, but they took measures. So they would open for half, schools would deal with it in different ways, but many schools said, okay, we take half of the children in the morning and then the other half in the afternoon. By the way, I read a very interesting interview also with a teacher who was in a newspaper, who actually said, well, this is not so bad. I have less time with my children now, because I see them half as much as I would do normally. But in her opinion, the time was more effective because she had only half of the kids there. And she said, yeah, some kids who are normally really quiet and who go, yeah, like under the radar, suddenly, suddenly I see them, and they also are more open and more relaxed. And I thought that was interesting, that changing this whole status quo and changing the routine in how we look at how education should be done can, well, maybe also teach us something, and maybe open us up to more possibilities that we wouldn't try normally.
But you're saying that the school, so each school made a decision in a different way. They could make, about how to handle the situation. And
but they had to do, they couldn't continue the normal way. So they had to do something about the distance, of course. We keep the 1.5 meter. That's like the most important measure here in the Netherlands. So they dealt with that in different ways. But usually it would mean that classes would be split up, and teachers would teach half the class at once. Yeah.
What about the time during the lockdown? Could you tell us a little bit about the online learning, and also maybe what happened with the students who are having more difficulties with that, or how was that handled? What was the situation?
Yeah, so in the beginning, of course, schools had to make the transition to online learning. And of course, there always had been teachers who were already active in that, and they said, well, this is great, finally I can do this more often, and I can also teach my colleagues in how to go about this. And for other teachers it was more difficult, of course. Usually I guess both in primary education and secondary education, they would try to have contact moments every day with classes. But of course, contact moments wouldn't last the whole day. So a lot, independent studying. Just so first kids were in primary education were asked to pick up their books from school, and they would get homework, and they would be they were expected to work independently, but also with help of their parents, who would work from home. I guess most schools, of course, after some chaos in the first weeks, most schools made the transition quite successfully. But the biggest challenge was the kids who went off the radar, who suddenly disappeared, and they couldn't get in touch with them. And there was a lot of attention for that also in the media, and we would hear about all the efforts that teachers would make to track down these children, to go to their homes, to sometimes the problem was children who would not have access to laptops or computers, so they were provided with those. But sometimes the problems were, of course, more severe. There was also attention for kids who had difficult situations at home, abusive parents who could not take care of them well enough. And there were also made provisions for these children, of course, after a couple of weeks, to give those children the opportunity to go back to school again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the general feeling was of appreciation to the education staff, to the teachers, or more kind of looking at the challenges and the shortcomings, or what was that?
Yeah, no, I think you can say that. Of course, there was, like I said, there was chaos in the beginning, but yeah, I guess you couldn't expect there not to be chaos after such a sudden change. But in general, there was yeah, there was understanding from parents and also appreciation for how schools in the end handled the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for this interesting, very interesting information. I think the situation in different countries is, well, in some ways similar, but in a lot of ways the coping was different. Do you have any general thoughts about, the qualities that can help or that have helped coping with uncertainty and maybe help us in the future? And maybe we can, nourish them for this era in which we will have more periods of uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about that a little bit, and I also read what you had in mind for it, and I saw that one of your focal terms was acceptance, and I guess that is really important. It's really important for people to kind of surrender when there is a situation that you cannot change. You need to accept it, and sometimes I think, but maybe I'm biased, but I when I look at my sons, for instance, sometimes I have the impression that young people are also kind of flexible and also have sometimes, but of course it's not does not go for everyone, but sometimes are more flexible in accepting, okay, this is how it is now, and okay, I have to get used to it. But then another skill that you could use is, or skill or quality, is to be creative, of course, in looking for opportunities, because you have to develop new routines. You have to develop new routines of getting in touch with people, of enjoying yourself, of communicating. And sometimes it takes, your holiday plans will change. So you need to be a little bit creative sometimes in thinking of other ways to achieve your goals, I think. And that is related to another quality, and that's maybe the quality of hope. That is also stressed a lot. Sometimes our government is criticized for that a little bit. They say, you have all these measures, and you say, well, this is the new. Our prime minister was speaking of the new normal. Get used to it. The 1.5 meter distance, social distancing, that's the new normal. And then, some people criticize our government and say, but people also need hope. And need to be assured that this is actually not normal, and that this is temporary, although it may last longer than we expected and longer than we hoped for. But there needs to be some sort of perspective.
Something to look forward to.
Yes, yes, yeah. I cannot. When I talk with my mom, she is a little bit more. She has more difficulties in accepting the situation and also in being hopeful. And but she also says, yeah, but my time is limited, so I don't have so much time to wait for the real new normal. But still, it's important to have some perspective. Yeah, and I guess a really important quality that people need is self-regulation. You need it to, when you are in education, or when you learn, or when you work, you are more on your own now, and you need skills that help you to manage yourself, and to nevertheless achieve your goals, I think. So skills, and that may also be, so what can I do to reward myself after doing a task that I do not really like, but now I'm on my own, there's no teacher watching me, I do not get maybe I don't get a grade, maybe I don't get immediate feedback. So people need to develop strategies to manage themselves, I think.
So that covers quite a lot, I think. You've talked about some things that are related to the self and some things that are related also to our outlook about the situation and how we think it will evolve or develop, what we hope for. But to balance it, also surrender and acceptance. And also you've talked about the need for hope for change despite this acceptance. And also understanding yourself within the situation and self-regulating and what can I do. So changing yourself to adapt. I think that's very wholesome in some ways. And thank you so much for this interview. I think this is a good place to end. And also, I think I take from what you've said, we know that hope is one of the character strengths that's most helpful or most predictive of change and of well-being. And I think that may be something that's important throughout life and also in situations of uncertainty. So thank you so much, Professor Marianne van Woerkom.
You're welcome.